Welcome back to another video where today I'm going to be showing you how to do a small drywall repair if you're a homeowner and you don't have much experience when it comes to drywall taping. So recently I replaced the water main coming into a property that I have, and now that I've completed that and we have a new meter installed from the city, I'm left with the opening here that I cut into the wall so I could bring the water main in through the foundation. And now that we're done with the city and the building permits closed, I want to close this up here properly with some drywall mud. So in this video, I'm going to show you, if you don't have much experience, how to go about taping something like this as easy as possible. So I'm a general carpenter, but I do some taping when it comes to some of the bathrooms or kitchen projects that we do. If it's something small, like a small bathroom, and we've replaced a bit of the drywall, so I need to do new corners or new corners into the ceiling, some straight passes, I can do all of that. But when it comes to something large, if we have a project where we're doing a full main floor and we have a whole bunch of taping, we actually have a taper that we bring in because they're a lot faster and a lot smoother when it comes to doing the taping. But I've learned with some of the other guys that I work with on how to do some of these repairs easy and get a professional finish at the end. So for completing a repair like this, we already have the drywall mounted and secured. So we're just going to need a couple tools to start off with. So we're going to be starting with a 4-inch knife. I've got a drywall tray, or you can use a hawk. So I use my hawk sometimes, but for this one, I'm going to be using the drywall tray. And you need tape. So you have two options when it comes to doing repairs like this. You can use a paper tape here, or you can use something like fiberfuse. So I learned with straight passes on how to do it with fiberfuse, and I use paper tape when I'm doing corners. I prefer fiberfuse because it's a little bit easier when it comes to doing small straight repairs like this than using the tape. If you don't get enough mud behind the tape, then you end up with bubbling or a little bit of non-sticking. And like I mentioned, I don't do drywall repairs all the time, but for the amount that I do, I prefer to use the fiberfuse. So if you're starting out, I definitely recommend starting with fiberfuse. It's a lot more forgiving with something like this. When it comes to the mud, again, you have a ton of options. If it's something really small, you can make your own mud with some of those pre-powdered bags, the sheetrock 20, sheetrock 30, sheetrock 45. But because I've done a bunch of other drywall repairs down here in this property, I actually just have a pail of the red all-purpose light drywall compound. So we're going to use that. So the very first thing we're going to do to start is we're going to take our knife and we're just going to pass over all these screws quick, just to make sure they're all sunk before we start and cut out a bit of the drywall here. So all you're looking to do is just pass the knife over top of these screws and see if you're catching on any of the screws. If you are, then you know you need to sink those screws a little bit more. All of our screws are sunk enough to start. So what we're going to do is V-notch the drywall on both sides here. So we're going to go around the entire patch here and do this. So what this is doing is giving us something to embed the mud into. It's like we're creating a factory joint when you have a new fresh piece of drywall. Because this is a butt joint here, we need to cut this down so we don't end up with a huge bubble in the middle of the repair here. It's going to make it easier so we don't need to feather out as wide here. So I just use the tip of my knife, go on a little bit of an angle here. So when you're doing this, you also want to make sure you're cleaning up any of this leftover paper here or any of the little bit of crumbs of drywall. What'll happen is if you don't get those out of the way now, when you apply your mud, it's going to cause you an issue where you'll have a little bit of bumping underneath, or the mud's not going to secure fully. So because we're working against a live water main here coming into the property, I'm going to be a bit careful as I get into this corner here and as I'm pulling down. I really want to make sure I don't nick this line and end up with a water leak, because that's on the city side, so it's not something that I could repair here on my own. So now that I've got the entire perimeter V-notched out, it's going to make it a little bit easier for the mud here to fit into. So one spot here is a little bit bigger of a hole than I'd like. So I'm going to start there with a little bit of a pre-fill quick before I start the taping. And I'm going to tape around and do this side at the very end to allow that mud a little bit of time to fill in the hole there. If you had something where you had a lot of time with this, what I'd recommend is actually pre-filling this with some sheetrock 5 or sheetrock 10 and letting that set up before you do the taping. But I'm looking just to get this done more on the quicker side. So we're just going to fill that in and start around and make our way over to that one at the very end. So now that we're ready to tape here, we're going to get a bunch of mud out of the pail here, and we're going to get ready to start doing our first passes. So if you don't have a lot of experience, do not worry. You're probably going to get mud all over yourself and all over the place. So if you're working with a finished floor, I would recommend laying down some tape around and then putting down some cardboard paper or something to catch the mud so you don't wreck the floor you're working against. It also makes cleaning up the sanding after easy, but we're working against a concrete basement, so I'm not too concerned here. So I've already mixed some water in this mud previously, but for first coat here, this is about how runny I like it personally. So it's got a bit of a hold to it, as you can see, but it is definitely workable. So let's get ready to start. So as I mentioned, we're just going to get ready to start here. We're just going to fill in just that tiny hole. And what we're going to do is take a bit of mud here, and we're going to be pulling in a downward motion here. So this is something that I am honestly still not fantastic with when it comes to cleanly pulling down, but what you're looking to do is have a little bit more of a mud buildup on the tip of your knife, and when you're pulling down like this and swooping, or if you want, you can just go like this. So for this first pass, you want to get a decent amount of coverage here. One of the benefits of using the fiber fuse is if you put a little bit too much on the wall, with the fiber fuse, once you pass over, it'll actually push out through the tape and you can pull the excess back off the wall, where when you do paper, it's a lot less forgiving. So if you have too much mud on the wall behind the tape, it's very hard to get that back out after. So we've got the perimeter here coated, and now what we're going to do is pull out a bit of the fiber fuse here. So I'm just going to roughly measure how long we need it. So around here is good for me. So the easiest way to do this is we have our rough measurement. We're just going to throw that onto the wall and use the knife to rip that off. And we could see now that we are pretty good here. So what we're going to do is embed this into the mud here. And I'm just going to do a quick pass over the fiber fuse to pull a bunch of the mud out from behind it. And as a beginner, again, what you can do is you can actually coat the fiber fuse after, just to make sure you are fully covered there for what you need. And again, you're just going to pull a bunch of this excess off. It's a lot easier to have less mud on here when it comes to your first few coats, so you don't have to sand as heavy. We'll do our next side here. Same thing, we're going to do our first pass with the knife and pull off a bunch of the excess mud right now. And we're just going to recoat the middle just to make sure we have got enough mud on this. So when it comes to taking the mud off, what you want to do is you want to start on your sides, and you're looking to take off the humps on the side and then smooth out your middle. So when you apply pressure, you're applying pressure on the corner of the knife. So you want to take off mud on, say, the left side here. You apply pressure so you're tight on the right and you're hovering over top. And then same in reverse. And now we just clean out our middle. And we're left with a pretty smooth finish on each side. So now looking at this, we just completed our first pass here with the mud and the fiber fuse. So what we're going to do now is allow this to dry for 24 hours. And then we're going to come back tomorrow and I'm going to show you just the little bit of sand that needs to be done. And then what we're going to do is upsize our knife and we're going to start coating the entire piece here. And I'll show you how to do second coat. And then once that's completed, again, we'll show you how to sand that all down and move on to our third. As a beginner, don't expect to get this all completed in 2 or 3 passes here. It may take you 4 or 5 with your sanding to get it to a smooth point where you're happy. But again, if you're learning, that's definitely not a problem. Just one thing to keep in mind is less mud is more. If you put too much mud on here, you're going to spend a ton of time sanding down in between. All right, so we're back. It's the following day, and now we're ready just to give everything just a quick pass over with a sanding block here. So again, like I mentioned, less mud is more here. So we really shouldn't have to sand down too much because we didn't add a ton of mud. So what we're looking to feel is that we have no humps or large pieces stuck around that are going to get in the way when we do our next pass here. So now that we're ready for our second pass here, we've got our mud. So I made it just a little bit runnier than I had it yesterday. You want it to still have a bit of shape here. So I just added a bit of extra water into the pan here to give this a bit of a stir. And we're now going to be upsizing the knife here. So with this pass, what we're looking to do is to get full coverage on everything. So we're going to feather out past our tape joint, but we're also going to put a bit of mud here in the middle where we have no patch. We're looking to build out all here to make this all the same level here. So right now I'm just looking to get some coverage. So what I'm doing is putting on about this much mud here, and then I shave off my edges so I don't get a bunch of run out. And what I'm doing is when I'm applying the mud, I'm starting with the tip on the wall and slowly bringing my knife up to move the mud off of the knife here. So now that we have a bit of coverage here on the entire patch, what we're going to do is similar like we did with the smaller 4-inch. We're going to cut the sides out here. So try to remove a bit of the mud here on the sides, on both sides, so then we can smooth out the middle. So again, we're applying pressure. So I kind of split my fingers here like this, and I apply pressure with the knife on the outer side. So we've smoothed out the two sides so far. So we're going to start a pass here in the middle. So when I'm smoothing out my middle here, I'm trying not to take a ton of mud out of the middle. I'm trying to keep a bit of that buildup still consistent. So if you are beginning, one of the things that you need to kind of think about is to leave well enough alone. So right now, I just dropped my knife a little bit and took a little bit too much out of here. And I have a little bit of a spot here that needs a bit more mud. The rest I'm pretty happy with for second. Once I sand down, it should be pretty good. And then I can come back for a final skim. But if I try to fill this spot now and this spot here, I may end up causing more damage to the rest of it. So then I'm at the point where I need to try to fix more portions of it. So I'm happy with how the rest of it looks right now. So what we're going to do is leave this, and we're going to come back again tomorrow, run another sand, and then we're going to see where we need to do touch-ups. All right, so we're back again the following day, and we're going to sand down quick one more time. So feel pretty good here. I need a little bit more mud in this corner. I can feel a bit of a hump, which we'll do on a pass. And like I mentioned yesterday, I took a little bit too much out of here. So there are a couple areas here we're going to focus on, but let's give this a quick sand here. So now that we've sanded off here again, we've got our mud, we've added a little bit more water, and we've upsized our knife here one more time. So when it comes to upsizing the knife, if you have more of an open area, the reason you're doing that is for feathering out, making your patch bigger, but we're kind of limited between the corner and the board here. So with this next one, we're just on our full size knife here. So again, we're just going to do a quick coat over everything. So now that I've coated one more time here, we're going to do the same thing and just try to pull off some of the exterior end here on the outside. Pretty happy with how this coat is done here, and I've repassed everything. It's smooth, so we're gonna let that dry, sand down, and then we should be pretty much done tomorrow, unless I need to add a little bit more into there. All right, so we're back the following day here, and we're just gonna give this a quick sand, but overall, running my hand across, I don't really have any bumps. I can see a couple small areas where I'm just gonna need a little bit of filler. So I have a little bit of bubbling here, so there's a bit of bubbles in the mud. So when I sand that down, I'll have some fish eyes here that need to be filled, and the 2 spots where my knife took the mud out. So let's sand this down here. So I'm just running my hand across here to see if I have any humps or anything, and I'm really happy here with how this turned out. I don't really have any imperfections other than the fish eyes and the spot where I took just a little bit of mud out. So what I'm going to do now is just do a quick pass with just a little bit of mud again, fill those fish eyes, fill my divot here, and then we're ready for primer. So the big thing that I learned when I first started doing drywall was it's easy to watch a video and see someone have a really good technique with their knife and stuff, but until you start getting that mud and the knife into your hand, that's when you're really going to get a feel for how to run your knife across the wall. So do not be worried if you're starting out and it takes you a couple additional times over 3 coats to get to an area where you're happy with. So as I said, even when I started, I was 4 or 5 coats sometimes for finishing. And right now, I just have technically a 4th coat just to hit these 2 imperfections here on the wall, and I'm ready to prime. So if you have any questions, leave me a comment, like, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.